Investigators, Mike Evans with episode 289 of Spy Curious, the weekly program of news in the investigation industry, where people tune in from all over Australia and industry associations, so they know what's going on in their industry association, and they want to know what's happening in civil investigations, government investigations, mercantile agents, debt collection, loss adjusting, and workplace health and safety all around Australia. So we've got a lot of information today, but just before I start, this is absolutely really critical this week. If you are an Australian Security Academy graduate student with no experience in factual investigations, or you've nearly finished your course and you are not quite licensed yet, send me your resume. I have an employer who has 90 full-time employee investigators who wants to speak to you Monday. Okay, so please send me your resume to mike.evans@australiansecurityacademy.edu.au so I can pass it on to the employer and show them that you're interested in working for one of the longest established, most efficient and supportive investigation agencies conducting workers' compensation factual investigations in New South Wales and Victoria. Do not send me anything if you're not an Australian Security Academy graduate. They specified they want an Australian Security Academy graduate. So please, people, send me your resume. I'll pass it on and they'll be in touch with you on Monday. So last week, if you remember in our program, Casey was talking about what happens when you hit a dead end in an investigation. So basically, in 1977 at Easy Street in Melbourne, there were two ladies murdered and the crime was never solved. As Casey was speaking and telling you about a dead end last Friday, the police had arrested a suspect in the 1977 Easy Street murders of two ladies in Melbourne. Now, this is really good news for the closure for the son of one of those ladies who was found alive at Easy Street, and for the relatives of the ladies as well. Katie was talking about a dead end in investigations and what your options and how to pivot, that sort of thing might have been. I, at the same time, was crapping on about why it's important to promote the good that we do in the investigation industry and focus on success, because the investigation industry is not very good at that. One of the police officers pictured here in this photograph taken in 1977 became a very successful licensed private investigator in Victoria. His name is Peter Hiscock, and you can see him in this photograph taken in Victoria, right dead centre in the middle, that's circled, where Peter is helping the other police officers and the umpires from the footy off the ground safely at a football match in the AFL. So Peter's there doing that. And Peter is a committed St Kilda supporter, and had they done anything wrong about St Kilda and given them bad umpiring decisions, I'm sure Peter would be advising them right there, right now, but it's probably not. So there's Peter in the lower right and Peter, the police officer, in the middle. So who says he's a successful private investigator? Anyone can say that. Well, basically, his employer, Peter's now retired, but Peter has been engaged to conduct investigation masterclasses in burglary fraud and civil investigation fraud by Professor Alan Manning, one of the most successful loss adjusters and one of the most successful civil investigators in Australia. He is a very well-respected man. I study with Professor Alan Manning, and I have several qualifications from his organisation, and he uses Peter Hiscock to take his civil investigation masterclasses. How good is that? What a great achievement. Great bloke. Well done, Peter. Absolutely amazing to see it. And Peter was interviewed frequently in the newspapers this week about him being back at Easy Street and his investigation as a young 30-year-old police officer back in 1977. Enjoy your retirement, Peter. You're a great bloke, a credit to the industry, and something that we really enjoyed celebrating here this week at the Australian Security Academy. Casey said dead ends. And I just told you, look, that happened way back in 1977. And the police followed up on it last week. And they've extradited the person who's the suspect. Does it go back any longer than that in civil investigations, or is that just limited to police? This accident happened in 1964. Offshore in Australia, aircraft carrier sliced another naval ship bow off, killed 84 sailors. There was no war on. They were doing manoeuvres off Jervis Bay, and the aircraft carrier, as big as it was, impacted with the other vessel. 84 people killed instantly when that bit that sank, they drowned, they couldn't get out. All the people on the bridge, all the officers on the bridge immediately on impact died. It was a massive peacetime disaster by the Royal Australian Navy. The post-traumatic stress disorder claims that came out of that by the sailors went on, as far as I am aware, up until 2 years ago, 2022. There may be ones I'm not aware of that are still going on today. The impact of the result of what they went through in 1964 affected their families and their families afterwards. And claims arose out of that ongoing because of the magnitude of that accident. So Casey's absolutely right. There are long-term investigations from significant events. They may have reached a dead end until there was a link made back to what happened in 1964, when the Voyager impacted with the Melbourne. So if you're around at the time, you'll never forget it because it was massive news. It's not today, and there was the only case in Australian history. This is the only one where they actually had 2 royal commissions, which is an achievement in itself. So that is a large investigation. This is a pre-recorded presentation, people. I can't say hello in the chat because of commitments that I have. I do apologise for that. Thanks for saying hello. I really appreciate it. It's great to know you're watching. If you're an Australian Security Academy graduate student and you want investigation work for workers' compensation, factual investigation, New South Wales or Queensland, get in touch with me. No experience required. Send me your resume. Put your hand up. Say, Mike, I want that job. And you'll get a call on Monday from the established employer who employs over 90 full-time investigators in that role in New South Wales and Victoria, and only employs Australian Security Academy graduate students. That's absolutely great. One of the things that hit the headlines this week was basically came out through the ABC that there is a massive fraud going on in relation to copper in Africa and Europe. So companies over there, because the price is going up for copper, are paying a premium for recycled copper. So it's currently sitting around about $15,000 a tonne or $6.80 a pound. And people in Africa are ripping up the railway system to pull the copper wire out of the signalling system there, and they're not being repaired quickly. It's causing all havoc and it's wide open. Is it a new scam? Can you get into it? The big questions. Well, copper being very valuable as it is, and being something that recyclers will pay a premium for, yes, is very valuable. And what the scammers do is they get normal silver wire cables, and what they do is they surgically cut the outer plastic and remove probably 1 metre or 1.5 metres of the silver wire. Then they insert copper strand into that plastic that they've just taken it out, and that gives it the appearance that it's 100 metres of recyclable copper wire. They use what they call those vinyl repair systems to repair the outside of the cable. They don't strip it all completely. They just substitute 1 metre of real copper into the steel cable, which is cheap, right? And the copper's valuable. And then they sell that to recyclers. And recyclers are pretty much aware of the scam, but there's pressure on them to produce copper all the time because it's very expensive to go and mine it. And if they can recycle it, they can take advantage of the higher prices. And they have within their recycling plants people who are designated just to buy material that can be recycled. Now, they don't care if there's a big rush on and it's a heavy demand, that there's a whole lot of PVC around the copper wire that appears to be copper wire that is actually steel wire and a much lower value, so they buy it. And that's probably one of the most common enduring scams that goes on in the world, all right? Because under pressure, organisations will pay the premium and buy it, and they get ripped off by the scammers. So that's the value of it, just currently $15,000 a tonne. And basically what they say is that they have identified details about scrap metal they provided, and they work with employees within the organisation sampling department to cover up the discrepancies. So that's what the scammers were doing. They're obviously bribing internal people with other sorts of scams too. So it might have been, not just copper, but it might be iron scrap or something like that. There's a whole range of things, but we're focusing on copper today because it's a very valuable commodity. And the scammers know that. Now, a couple of years ago, over in Turkey, what they did was the scammers actually got several tons of copper into some shipping containers. I love my shipping containers, don't I? I'm always waffling on about shipping containers. And the rocks that were copper were put into the shipping containers. Now, what the scammers did was, before it was loaded onto the ships, bribed the officials at the wharves and stuff like that, got in there, took out the copper mineral and replaced it with painted paving rocks. So it looked like it was copper. It's not a copper colour, it's sort of green that they painted. That's the raw material of copper. It's green, not copper colour, okay? So they painted it and substituted it. And that scam was worth millions. And the insurance company had a claim against them in relation to it. So it was instant cash for the scammers. And basically they got away with it, and they were caught up with eventually, but it took a very long time and a lot of money. So this involves insurance investigation because those ships, they're insured, all right? These aren't warships, which aren't, okay? So this is copper and the demand for it that led to it. So amazing scam there that happened just for people to take advantage of the demand. So that's how scammers work. They look for what's in demand. Around Australia currently, Build Skills Australia are the place that have been tasked with looking at the Australian private investigation qualification, the security risk management qualification, the security management qualification, and the certificate for and diploma levels accordingly in those areas. The people tasked with it are basically architects and construction people who know nothing about security. Previously, when this happened, all the people involved in it were security. Now, we kicked up a big fuss about this because those security people were not private investigators, and they were telling us how it was going to be. Now, we had to go to basically the minister to get a hearing in the previous change to the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services program, the Certificate 4 in Security Risk Management program, and the Diploma of Security Risk Management program, because the bigger firms who had all the influence that tried to take over and take command of the process are only interested in delivering government-funded programs at the minimal delivery and assessment, right? They're not interested in skilled workers who know what they're doing. They just want to get a lot of money in, bleed the system dry, and then sell their security company because it gives the appearance that it's worth a fortune. And in China, they're lining up to buy them in Australia because of all the government funding. So that's how it works. It's a massive scam. Why is it a problem? If you are of Aboriginal descent, then you're about to hear the name mentioned of a deceased person. You may not like to stop watching now. G4S, major security company, major contract winner and major government supplier, were found guilty of the death of Ian Ward in Western Australia. Ian was one of the last nomadic Aboriginals. He had a job. He was very well respected in his work. He went back to his community for a visit one day to see some friends and relatives, just like you or I or anyone else. He celebrated with a few drinks. He was arrested for being drunk. And G4S, the security firm, had to drive him from the community to Perth. They reenacted the drive. He was put in the back of this prison van for transporting prisoners. It had no air conditioning, no windows, no way of getting any fresh air. The reenactment said that the conditions inside that prison van during the trip reached 50.6 degrees. Basically, Mr. Ward died of heat exhaustion and exposure in the back of that prison van due to the negligence of G4S. The court found them guilty and fined them $11,500. It was a tragic situation for Mr. Ward and his family. He had no control over his circumstances. The duty of care was on G4S, the large security company with the government contract, who had influence over the government, and anyone else with Build Skills Australia in the future, similar to Build Skills. G4S had respect and influence. Ian Ward had nothing. Valuable man, the last nomadic Aboriginal, killed by a security company in Australia. Now, these guys, they're architects and construction people and street names people. They don't know what security really is at the pointy end. And they're trying to water down the qualifications in private investigations to be easy to get if you can spell your name correctly and your address, and has no benefit for the future employer. So they want to water down the private investigator qualification and the security risk management qualifications. And they may just get away with it. Well, the impact on that is only going to lead to more of this. And it's a shame that these people can go, on the basis of information from one organisation who's a large security RTO in Australia, we're going to water down the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services for government funding so that people who graduate from it can spell their name and their address correctly, but can't take a statement, can't do surveillance, can't give evidence in court, can't do any of that. But the RTO still gets a lot of government funding. Doesn't make sense, I know, all right? Does not make any sense at all. The employers are screaming for skilled investigators, and Build Skills are trying to work around the system with their mate who they're listening to in the security industry. Now, they did this last time too. They absolutely did it last time. And the person who had the most influence in it was involved in this.
An esteemed Brisbane lawyer and a Gold Coast business owner are facing court accused of laundering over $4 million using the private details of their clients. Natasha Kramer has the details.
The prominent Brisbane lawyer sat on the opposite side of the courtroom today, appearing via video link from the Watch House. Michael Boscher has been charged by the Australian Federal Police, accused of being part of a $4.5 million laundering scheme. The 53-year-old charged alongside Gold Coast businessman Richard Franks. Officers conducted multiple searches yesterday at properties in Barton, Gracefield, Helensvale and Brisbane City, uncovering more than $200,000 in cash hidden under stairs in a safe and a cash counter. The arrest following nearly a year-long investigation that's still continuing.
Last time they changed the security industry qualifications for RTOs. Richard Franks was a major influence in it. Well, since then, he's been involved with money laundering and he's facing charges in relation to it, and he assumed the identity of a couple of his students. What did the AFP think about that?
What we will allege is that over the course of this year and this investigation, up to $4.5 million of cash has been laundered. This was a very sophisticated and complex investigation.
Boscher was already out on bail when he was arrested overnight. He has been released again. His co-accused also released on bail.
So Build Skills have got themselves a real problem. They're listening to what's allegedly supposed to be prominent people and prominent organisations, and they're not listening to the people that employs the graduates or the students at the pointy end. There are changes that need to be made to the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services and the Certificate 4 in Security Risk Management. There are. But they're not going to come top down from a bunch of construction workers acting on behalf of a great mate in the security industry when it didn't work out for G4S and it didn't work out for money launderers and people who assumed the identities of people who were their students as an RTO. So these guys, they've got an uphill battle in front of them. All right. Moving right along, Tasmania Police. If you witness this, they want to speak to you, okay? I've got it happening twice, so you'll see it the first time and you'll think, whoa, and then it'll start again. Here we go. So if you witness that or have dashcam footage in relation to it, Tasmania Police want to speak to you about those tyres coming off that car and bouncing towards the car behind them who had their dashcam on. Now, obviously the car didn't stop, it kept going and there may not have been damage, there may be some, but it's a really common investigation for you, the private investigator. Unsecured loans in Tasmania, I think they're around about $350 fine by the police, but the insurance company is going to want to recover the damage caused to any following vehicles as a result of hitting that debris later on or whatever. They're going to want to know, identify that vehicle as well. So I'm not saying that that is what happened, but the Tasmania Police came out this week and asked for any witnesses in relation to that one. So if you lived in Tea Tree Road and you were driving along there and you got dash cam footage, I'm sure they want to speak to you in relation to that one this week. Now, I've just got to cover a couple of jobs and then I've got to run because of heavy commitments. I do apologise. This is pre-recorded and I can't say hello in the chat. I'll just whip on to this week's jobs. I hope. What do we got? So, Healthcare and Complaints Commission have a talent pool and they want you to apply for that. If you see the words talent pool, apply. Very few people do. They think it's not a job. It's just putting your name down on a list. I won't bother. They're never going to contact me. I have had students in the past that have applied, no experience, and they have got absolutely super jobs within government just by applying and turning up. No experience when they started. They had the Cert 4 in government. That a government department from that talent pool ad put them through the diploma and the advanced diploma later on, and they are influential, powerful people in the public service today because they applied for a job that said talent pool. They weren't too big, they weren't too proud, they did it and didn't even know what they were doing, and they've had considerable success as a result of doing it. So put your name down, get into it. If you've got your certificate for a government or diploma of government, you'll go to the top of the list, and they do follow through on it. You might think, Centrelink, do anything. Now, don't ever think like that. You see talent pool, apply. ProCare are looking for a surveillance operator in the Northern Territory, Darwin, so that's a great opportunity. All these jobs are on our Facebook page, people. Principal investigator, the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. These are always my favourite jobs by people that read my my pages. All these jobs are available on the Australian Security Academy Facebook page. You have to ask to join, you have to ask 2 questions, and you'll see those jobs and a lot more. I am too busy to put all the jobs that are available up. I just don't have the time. There's so many, and I'm so busy I can't do it. Lee Kelly, investigations in New South Wales are after workers' compensation insurance investigators. So Lee Kelly, been around forever, must be 40 years now. Great to see Lee Kelly advertising for investigators. Manager of Investigations and Intelligence at the Department of Transport Main Roads in Brisbane. That'd be a very high paying job. NDIS want investigators everywhere. That's all my jobs for this week, people. I haven't got any others, but I must re-emphasise. If you're an Australian Security Academy student, you have your licence as an investigator in your state, or you are nearly finished your course and about to become licensed, send me your resume and I'll put you in touch with this organisation that has 90 full-time investigators employed with it. It's been established for years. They pay on time every time. It's a growing organisation with a supportive office and supportive environment for investigators. They have an onboarding program and their own internal training, and you will be receiving instructions from some of the best in the industry. Send me your resume. I'll put you in touch with them. They'll be back in touch with you on Monday. Today is the 27th of September 2024. If you're an Australian Security Academy student, get in touch, please. Okay, that's really important. Don't muck about. Send me your resume and I will put you in touch with them. They want an Australian Security Academy graduate. That's really important too. I'm going at it. No, I'm not.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
My mission is complete for this week, people. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate your support. Sorry I couldn't acknowledge your presence. We had Investigations Uni episode 100 today, where we concentrated on real insurance fraud and investigation that you actually do in Australia. So episode 100 there. If you're an Australian Security Academy student and you need access to that, email me if you're not on my mailing list. There was a really insightful investigation presentation on AFCA and how they decide their decisions and determinations, as well as insurance fraud in stage motor vehicle accidents and motor vehicle accident investigations. Episode 100. Investigations Uni. See you next week, people. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. It's a great industry to be working in, as exemplified by Peter Hiscock, who takes the masterclasses in investigation for the LMI group. And there's Professor Manning acknowledging Peter as the instructor in the masterclass. It's great to be an investigator in the company of such eminent people